At the age of 21, this girl is already living the life most people dream of, because she has the richest father around. She is beautiful, intelligent, noble, and wealthy, but she lost her mother at a very young age. Under the care of her father and governess, excessive pampering shaped her into a willful and self-centered person. She often hides under the table, secretly listening to the adults talk. She likes interfering in other people's lives according to her own ideas. For the past 20 years, her days have been carefree. Her name is Emma. Though Emma is at the age when romantic feelings first begin to bloom, she often says she will never marry. She does not care about her own marriage, but she cares very much about other people's marriages. Even when reading, she is always distracted, looking at the little dolls in her room. She is also thinking about how to pair them up. Suddenly, bursts of laughter come from downstairs. Emma immediately runs to the window. In the garden, her sister and her childhood friend are playing together. The air between them feels so intimate that it looks as though they are in love. This discovery makes Emma incredibly excited. In the end, with her matchmaking, her sister really does marry her childhood friend. This greatly encourages Emma. She declares with even greater confidence that she truly has a gift for matchmaking, and the facts seem to prove it. Not long after, the governess who grew up by her side also marries the old pastor from the same village under Emma's arrangement. Her father scolds Emma, saying she should not have married off the governess. Emma replies that persuading an unmarried old maid to marry means saving the rest of her life. For her, marriage is a bright and open road. Ever since the governess moved out of Emma's home, the house has suddenly become quiet and empty. Only then does Emma understand her father's concern. Scenes of playing with her sister as a child also rise uncontrollably in her mind. Lonely Emma falls in love with taking walks in her sadness. One day, when she reaches the boarding school, a nun is chatting with her. A young girl suddenly enters Emma's sight. The nun tells her about the girl's background. Emma's naturally gossip-loving nature instantly comes alive. The girl's name is Harriet. It is said that she is an illegitimate child. Her father is very generous and always pays her living expenses in advance. Based on this, Emma guesses that her family must be wealthy. Having few friends herself, Emma takes the initiative and invites Harriet to her home as a guest. However, attending a dinner party for the first time, Harriet does not understand basic table manners. She clumsily follows along and learns from everyone else. Emma also kindly reminds her. After going back and forth like this, the two become close friends who can talk about anything. They often meet up to spend time together. One day, when they go to the charity house, Harriet suddenly leaves Emma behind and runs to greet a young man. It turns out that a tenant farmer named Martin had already confessed his love to Harriet earlier. But when Emma hears that Martin is only a farmer, she immediately objects. She believes Harriet deserves a better partner. In truth, Emma has no bad intentions. In 19th century England, there is a natural divide between the aristocracy and commoners. Ordinary people can hardly cross it easily. They believe that only by marrying a gentleman of high society can a woman gain a noble status. Thinking of this, Emma decides to find Harriet a respectable gentleman with standing. So she thinks of the young pastor in town. The young pastor is on the rise in his career, with a future full of promise. To bring the two together, Emma makes a detailed plan. First, they will paint in the little garden. Then she deliberately calls the pastor over to comment, creating a chance for the two to meet. Unexpectedly, the pastor's eyes are always fixed on Emma. Harriet also notices this. Emma tries hard to push Harriet forward. Out of politeness, the pastor has some interaction with Harriet. For a girl who has grown up in a boarding school, receiving attention from a gentleman is a tremendous honor. Harriet is so excited she can hardly control herself, trying with all her might to present herself well. Even though the hand holding the vase is nearly giving out, she still works hard to keep her posture proper. Under Emma's interference, Harriet rejects Martin's proposal. In an instant, Martin loses all direction. He has no choice but to ask his master Knightley for help. Knightley is an old family friend of Emma's father. He has watched Emma grow up since she was little. He has the authority of a father figure, and the tolerance of an older brother. Knightley is 19 years older than Emma. Their relationship is both like elder and junior, and like brother and sister. Last night, Knightley learned the full story from the governess. Once before, when Emma insisted on playing matchmaker for others, Knightley warned her not to interfere in other people's marriages. In the entire town, Knightley is the only person who dares criticize Emma to her face. Because of that, the two do not always get along smoothly. Knightley believes that Harriet's birth and background do not match the pastor in the slightest, because the pastor is ambitious, and he will not marry a woman with no sense and no status. But if Harriet marries Martin, the two of them would live a peaceful and comfortable life. Emma, however, is unwilling to listen to Knightley's advice. She refuses to admit that Harriet is ordinary, and she is determined to carry this marriage plan through to the end. Disappointed, Knightley turns and leaves, leaving only a lonely figure behind. At this moment, an inexplicable sense of loss suddenly rises in Emma's heart. One day, while her sister and brother-in-law are visiting home, Emma also invites Knightley to the family dinner. During the meal, she keeps testing him, wanting to know whether he is still angry with her. Fortunately, after dinner ends, Knightley comes to find her on his own. The two finally clear the air. The next day, their neighbor Mr. Weston hosts a dinner party. Emma's family is invited to attend. Originally, Emma wants to bring Harriet along so she can meet more people from high society. Unfortunately, Harriet cannot attend because she has caught a cold. That evening, the pastor also comes to share Emma's carriage. The moment they meet, the pastor squeezes in beside Emma and says all kinds of pointless things. Emma mistakenly thinks the pastor wants to ask her about Harriet, so she enthusiastically shares Harriet's recent situation. She says Harriet cannot attend the Weston dinner because she has a cold. The pastor listens perfunctorily, not caring about Harriet at all. At the dinner party, the pastor keeps sticking close to Emma and paying attention to her. Even when Emma is chatting with guests, the pastor keeps cutting in from time to time. He is far too eager for success and wants to attach himself to Emma's family. But Emma cannot see this. Knightley, standing nearby, sees the man perfectly clearly. At night, when they are preparing to go home, heavy snow suddenly begins to fall, because Knightley's carriage is already full. This gives the pastor his chance. He finally gets the opportunity to escort Emma home, but not long after getting into the carriage, he can no longer wait and tries to confess his feelings to Emma. The pastor's words leave Emma stunned. Emma sternly stops him and says she could never possibly accept him. A frightening look appears in the pastor's eyes. At this moment, Emma finally understands how accurate Knightley's analysis of him was. The next day, heavy snow covers the entire town. Remembering that he left Emma behind the previous night, Knightley hurries to Emma's home, but Emma is deeply troubled at this moment. She does not know how to tell Harriet about what happened. Even her mood to go downstairs and look at the snow disappears in an instant. 3 days later, she comes to the dormitory door at the boarding school. She circles outside the door again and again, and finally decides to force herself to face reality. She tells Harriet everything about the pastor from beginning to end. Harriet is a kind and insecure girl. Knowing that her background is awkward, she does not blame Emma for being too rash. She only blames her own humble status, believing even a pastor would not look at her. Emma comforts her, saying that even better gentlemen will be waiting for her. Meanwhile, after being rejected by Emma, the pastor soon meets a wealthy young lady from London, and the two quickly become engaged. Emma, whose matchmaking career has suffered a blow, finally recognizes reality. She no longer blindly searches for husbands for Harriet. One day, their relatives in town warmly invite the two of them over as guests. Only after Emma enters does she notice a lady sitting not far away. Through the relative's introduction, Emma learns that this girl is the legendary Jane. Jane is graceful, well-mannered, educated, and known far and wide as a proper young lady. From the relative's words, Emma learns that Jane already has a fiancé. On the way back, a strange man lingers at the village entrance. Kind-hearted Emma thinks he is lost and offers to show him the way, but the man smiles and replies that he does not need help. Then he walks away without looking back. As soon as she gets home, they receive news that the pastor will soon hold his wedding. Harriet looks extremely sad because of it. At the same time, Emma learns from Knightley that the young man she met at the village entrance is Frank, the son of their neighbor Weston. Since childhood, he has lived and studied in London at his aunt's home. Now, tired of city life, he has returned to his hometown. To celebrate his son's return, the Weston family decides to hold a dinner and invite the whole town to a ball. Weston specially brings Frank to visit Emma and her father. The two young people have already met once before, and soon begin talking as if they have known each other for years. Frank tells Emma that when he was in London, he had already met the pastor and the pastor's fiancée. When Emma mentions Jane, Frank also says that he knows her very well. These pieces of news deeply shock the gossip-loving Emma. It turns out that this lady from London is not as impressive as she seems. After that, Frank often asks Emma to walk around with him. Frank has extraordinary knowledge, which makes him seem even more like a gentleman. He and Emma also have many topics in common. When chatting with Frank, Emma feels a kind of easy pleasure she has never had before. When she returns home and sees Knightley's serious and rigid face, she starts comparing him with Frank from time to time. Unsurprisingly, the two of them fall into another pointless argument. The gathering at Frank's home begins. All the prominent ladies in town arrive. Emma hears a piece of news from those ladies. Jane, who lives at her aunt's home, has somehow received an expensive piano. At that time, owning a piano costs almost as much as an ordinary person owning a house. Yet such a valuable gift does not come from the fiancé she mentioned, nor is there any signature attached. This has become the most sensational news in town recently. Emma tells Frank this news. Knightley, standing nearby, has been watching the two of them closely. At that moment, the concert begins. The ladies warmly invite Emma to the stage to perform a piece for everyone. Frank stays behind her. Knightley watches this scene from afar, with a meaningful expression on his face. But then Jane's appearance completely steals all of Emma's spotlight. Jane's reputation is built on talent. Frank's enthusiasm also becomes even more obvious when Jane takes the stage. Frank and Emma only sing one song together, yet he keeps Jane behind and performs 3 songs with her in a row. When Knightley also steps forward to turn pages for Jane, Emma is quite surprised by how these men are behaving. She and her sister analyze these signs from below the stage. In the days that follow, Emma believes both Knightley and Frank have been bewitched by Jane, and in fact, it seems that may truly be the case. When they go into town to buy household goods, Jane's aunt stands in front of her home and warmly greets them. It turns out Frank is also visiting her home. In this tiny and shabby sitting room stands a piano that contrasts sharply with the living conditions around it. Frank stares at Jane with deep affection. Before long, Jane's aunt notices Knightley passing by. She calls out to him loudly. In an instant, the little sitting room becomes even more crowded. Watching Knightley walk straight toward Jane and greet her warmly, Emma suddenly feels a sourness rise in her heart. However, Frank's father is very optimistic about his son's closeness with Emma. He strongly supports Frank spending time with Emma. Emma also seems to like this boy from the big city very much. But one day, Frank suddenly says goodbye to her. His aunt far away in London has run into some trouble, and he needs to go handle it for a long time. Without thinking, Frank's hand takes hold of Emma's. Startled, Emma pulls away. This accidental touch sends a ripple through Emma's heart.
In short, perhaps Miss Woodhouse, as you know everything, you could hardly be without suspicion. I thought I would be able to stay here forever. My regard for this place is, it's very warm.
Frank's vague words make Emma mistakenly think this is a confession to her. Watching Frank's figure fade into the distance, she becomes restless and distracted. In the end, she decides that Frank must have fallen in love with her. 1 month later, the newly married pastor returns to town with his wife. Seeing this, Harriet loses even more faith in marriage. The pastor's wife loves drawing attention to herself. The couple goes around showing off their wealth everywhere. It has to be said, the two of them really are a perfect match. This disgusts Emma. No matter where she goes, she keeps making malicious comments about them. Knightley tells her not to let other people's behavior anger her, because it is not worth it, so he gives Emma a book. He hopes Emma will read more and calm her heart. What Emma does not notice is that no matter when, Knightley is always her outlet for frustration, and only Knightley is willing to listen to these empty complaints. Not only does Knightley tolerate her, he also takes good care of her close friend Harriet. He often encourages Harriet to be confident. This makes Harriet feel deeply warmed. Meanwhile, Emma, who mistakenly believes Frank is in love with her, receives no letters from him after he leaves. Instead, Jane, whom Emma thinks he barely knows, frequently receives greetings from London. When Jane's aunt asks whose letter it is, Jane only smiles and says nothing. 1 year later, Emma receives news at the Weston home. Their son will return tonight. Emma's heart suddenly begins pounding. After seeing Frank, he invites Emma to the first dance. They look very well matched. Frank's mother is even more delighted. Knightley moves through the crowd, watching Emma in the ballroom from a distance. His feelings extremely complicated. But Harriet, whom Emma has brought along, is never invited to dance by any gentleman from beginning to end. She remains neglected on the side, looking deeply uncomfortable. Seeing that the ball is almost over, Emma still does not want to part from Frank. They dance one song after another. In front of Frank, she is like a lively little rabbit. When Mrs. Weston suggests that the pastor invite Harriet, who once secretly loved him, to dance, the pastor refuses. He says that even without a partner, he will not dance with someone of low birth. However, Harriet, standing not far away, hears this. At the same time, Knightley and Emma also notice what has happened. Perhaps out of pity, or perhaps out of gentlemanly grace. Knightley gently walks toward the girl and extends a helping hand. Harriet takes his arm, trying hard to hold back the tears about to fall. She follows Knightley onto the dance floor. After the dance, Emma thanks Knightley. She thanks Knightley for reaching out to help her close friend, and she gives the most tender and final dance of the ball to Knightley as repayment. What no one knows is that early the next morning after returning home, Frank rides quickly toward town. He looks as if he is in a hurry to see someone. On Frank's way home, he unexpectedly rescues the injured Harriet. When he carries Harriet to Emma's home, Emma tentatively asks Harriet, "Frank is a fine person, and does she have any thoughts about spending time with him?" Unexpectedly, Harriet replies that she does indeed have someone in her heart, but that person is not Frank. It is the mature and responsible Knightley by Emma's side. For some reason, when Emma hears this news, she suddenly panics. Looking at Knightley walking outside with her father, she advises Harriet to carefully sort out her feelings. She must not act on impulse. From then on, Emma seems as if she has suddenly lost something. She becomes unwilling to go out. Knightley also notices the change in her. He suggests that they invite friends out for an outing. That may help improve her mood. The pastor and his wife, who love social gatherings, also join this outing. Jane and her aunt are there too. Emma also brings Harriet along. On the way, when Jane casually sneezes, Frank looks somewhat worried. He immediately steps forward to ask about her condition. During the evening rest, Emma intentionally or unintentionally moves closer to Frank, interacting with him very intimately. Knightley's gaze also keeps drifting toward them. That night, because Emma cannot stand the pastor's wife, she repeatedly makes things difficult for her. This makes the pastor's wife extremely angry. The gathering ends unhappily. After everyone leaves, Knightley points out Emma's mistake. He believes there is no need to behave this way. It will make the pastor's wife lose face badly. Aside from loving to show off, she has not actually done anything wrong. One should treat others with tolerance and generosity. However, Jane says at this moment that she wants to return to town early. Jane's eyes are filled with tears, and she refuses to let Emma call a carriage for her. She says goodbye to Emma, wanting to walk home alone. Emma seems to sense that something is unusual. Clearly, everyone was very happy when they arrived yesterday. Watching Jane leave, Emma is utterly confused. Knightley comes to find her again. He apologizes to Emma for the way he criticized her last night. Before long, Frank rides over on horseback. He looks extremely agitated. Surprisingly, at noon, worried that the heat might make Jane suffer heat stroke, Frank rides after Jane and brings her back. On the hilltop, they all begin chatting together. When Jane's aunt mentions a small ordinary matter, Emma mocks her cruelly. There is a trace of contempt in that mockery. This makes Jane's aunt feel deeply embarrassed. Knightley cannot allow Emma to keep acting recklessly. He finds Emma again and questions her behavior over the past 2 days. But Emma does not realize how excessive her actions have been. This pushes Knightley's anger to its peak. Knightley is always in front of Emma, yet he never says the word love. He also never indulges her mistakes. Compared with empty sweet talk, he is more willing to guide her carefully, to smooth away all her sharp edges, so that one day, she can take over from her father and manage the family estate well. After returning home, Emma tells her father everything that happened over the past 2 days. Unexpectedly, her father firmly takes Knightley's side. That night, Emma cannot sleep at all. She seems to realize her own arrogance. When she walks down the street, she feels as if she can see others looking at her the same way. Only now does she truly understand the embarrassment Jane's aunt suffered yesterday. Nervous and uneasy, she knocks on that worn wooden door, wanting to personally apologize to Jane's aunt. To her surprise, after only a few words, Jane's aunt forgives her without the slightest resentment. After settling one worry, Emma returns home, but she receives news that Knightley wants to leave. This is the first long journey Knightley has taken for as long as Emma can remember, and his return date is uncertain. When the two say goodbye, Knightley holds Emma's hand, wanting to kiss the back of it. In the end, he still chooses to give up. In Knightley's heart, Emma already loves someone else. Emma wants to make him stay, but she cannot find the position or reason to do so. She can only watch helplessly as Knightley leaves. But in this moment, her heart suddenly feels unbearably empty. Meanwhile, Jane also leaves the town. Frank's heart feels empty too. But 2 months later, explosive news arrives. Frank and Jane have suddenly become engaged in London. It turns out the two had already secretly promised themselves to each other long ago. Frank pursued Emma and flirted with her only to hide the truth from others. Jane used this to avoid the obstruction of her domineering aunt. Frank also used Emma as a shield so he could secretly spend time with Jane. Under everyone's worried gaze, Emma is not as heartbroken as they imagined. Only now does she understand that what she felt for Frank was not love at all. It was longing for Knightley, the man who kept saying he would come back, yet failed to do so again and again. Only after Knightley leaves does Emma understand. Without Knightley beside her, she can accomplish nothing. It turns out that all these years, Knightley has always been silently by her side, always appearing immediately whenever she needed him. It turns out the reason no one else ever seemed good enough to her was because of Knightley. Just as Emma finally understands herself, Harriet comes to find her. She has two reasons for coming. On one hand, she wants to comfort Emma for losing Frank. On the other, she wants to ask Emma to be her matchmaker and help bring her and Knightley together, because Knightley is the man who has given her the greatest sense of security among all the men she has met. Before, she was not brave enough, but during the time Knightley has been away, she has thought it through, and she must seize Knightley. Emma panics. On one side is her closest friend, on the other is the man she has just realized she loves. She is caught in a dilemma. A few days later, after learning of Frank and Jane's engagement, Knightley rushes back to Highbury without stopping. He thinks Emma will be hurt by it. He believes Emma has been deceived by Frank and is deeply worried about her situation. Yet this time, his return brings an unexpected reward. It turns out that seeing Emma unwilling to marry far away because she has to care for her fragile father, wealthy Knightley has also always been unwilling to leave. He has always stayed by Emma's side because of that deep love. He never imagined this love could be returned, but whenever Emma needs him, he will appear without hesitation. Whether now, or in the future, hand in hand, the two tell Emma's father the news.